So Google Stadia often gets a pretty rough ride whenever it comes to any tech news outlets reporting on the cloud gaming service. And in today's video, we are going to be doing our review of the service because we've been using it now for about 3 to 4 months. And we've got a number of views about Google Stadia and what's good and what's potentially lacking about it. So if you are considering giving Google Stadia a try, then be sure to watch this video just to get some ideas on what you can expect from the cloud gaming service. So let's get on with it, shall we? So if you're a returning subscriber to the channel, then you'll absolutely know that we do a lot of cloud gaming and a lot of kind of tinkering with it and playing around with it. Personally, I've been using GeForce now for a very long time, since it was back in beta on the old Nvidia Shield TV. So I'm very much used to that service. And Google Stadia was always that thing that was just off on its own and it always got a bit of a bad rep. So we decided to give it a go. And to be honest, we were very surprised by the results considering the bad press that it got. So first up, what is Google Stadia? So it is a cloud gaming service and it is definitely the closest one to a traditional console-like experience. So what I mean by that is you have 2 tiers. So the first one is a free tier, which enables you to play your games in up to 1080p resolution. And through the service, you'll be able to buy your games like a traditional console service. So you'll be able to go onto the Stadia store, search for the game that you want to buy, and then you purchase it. You don't need to pay for a subscription to be able to play that game. You can stream it to any devices that support Google Stadia. So like I said, it's very similar to that traditional old school console setup in the fact that you buy the game that you want to play, you have access to that game whenever you want, and you can stream it. There's no strings attached. You don't need to pay a subscription. The only caveat is you can only play it in up to 1080p resolution. If you decide to opt for the paid for tier, which is Google Stadia Pro, the difference with that is you have up to 4K resolution for your streaming, but you also get access to Google's library of games that come through the Pro subscription. So every month, they put up some games that will be free of charge for Google Pro subscribers. So there's normally about 3 to 4 of them. Sometimes there's some AAA titles, sometimes there's some more indie titles, but you'll get access to those, so you can claim those to put them into your library. Now, one thing to note, if you do cancel your Pro subscription and move across to the free tier, is you won't be able to stream those games, so you'd have to purchase them. Another perk of having the Pro subscription is the fact that you also get access to exclusive sales, so you don't have to always pay full price. So there's often a lot more deals available for the Pro subscribers, so that is one thing worth noting. And if you do buy a game with a Pro subscription sale, you'll be able to stream that on the free tier. So that's what I mean by it being more of a console-like experience, in the fact that if you want to, you can just buy your games and then stream them across whenever you want to. But if you do want to opt for, I suppose, a more modern take on things where you pay for a subscription, you can also do that and you get a better resolution, and you'll also get access to some free games that come across to the service every month. So that's all well and good that it's a console-like experience, but how does it actually perform? So we'll kick off with the good stuff that we really like about Google Stadia. And the first one is the streaming experience. Like we said, we cover a lot of cloud gaming services, and Nvidia GeForce Now has always been our go-to one. It's the comfortable one to play, it gives us access to a large library of games that we already own, and the streaming quality is pretty damned good. However, Stadia absolutely takes the biscuit when it comes to that #1 spot. And that streaming quality is really impressive. When I first started it, I started playing through Resident Evil 7, and it felt like I was playing it on my iPhone, and there was no lag, there was no input lag using a Bluetooth controller or anything like that. It just felt like it was running natively on the device. When I was able to play it on my Nvidia Shield TV, things looked fantastic, and again, there was no input lag and there was no dropped frames or anything like that. It just played like the game was running natively on my hardware, which was really impressive. Throughout the past 3 or 4 months of using Google Stadia, I haven't really had any dropped games, so I've not been kicked out of the service or anything like that, and everything always looks really good. There are a few times where it will stutter, so if I'm relatively far away from my router, so if I'm in the master bedroom, that tends to be where any kind of cloud gaming just absolutely falls apart. So Microsoft xCloud just doesn't work in there. Nvidia GeForce Now kind of just drops out every so often, and Stadia is very similar. However, it definitely gave me the most consistent experience. I didn't drop out of games too much, and it was the most playable one out of the lot. So when it comes to streaming quality, Google have absolutely nailed it, and it's by far the best of the bunch. Nvidia GeForce Now comes as a close second, but there's definitely times where you do see those dropped frames, you do see that input lag, and it's just not quite as good as Google Stadia. Google Stadia definitely gets the closest to it feeling like it's actually running on that device physically, and it's not being streamed to that device. So hats off to Google for really nailing that streaming quality, because it is absolutely fantastic. Another thing to celebrate about Google Stadia is the fact that you can finally stream it on pretty much all of your devices. So when we first got into Stadia, there was definitely a massive lacking issue with the fact that it was relatively difficult to get the streaming service onto the big screen TV, which kind of boggles the mind since it'd been out for like 18 months by the time we jumped into it. Granted, it did work, you just needed to jump through some hoops. You either had to buy some old outdated hardware or you needed to sideload the Android APK onto an Android TV device. It wasn't the ideal setup, but you could do it. However, it wasn't really supported particularly well by Google. Thankfully, Google fixed that very recently, and you can now just download it onto Android TV or onto a Google TV device. It is only on certain supported devices, however, you can download it through a beta through them as well, so it pretty much works across most devices if you have an Android TV device. So if you want to get it onto your big screen TV, it's there, so it does work. Now the great thing about Google Stadia is it works across a large amount of devices. So we've been using it on the iPhone, we've also been using it on the iPad, but you can play it on a PC or you can play it on the big screen TV. There's all sorts of different ways and it supports different input methods as well. So if you're playing on a PC, for example, you can use a mouse and keyboard if that's your jam and you want to get a closer experience to PC gaming, or if you want to use it with a controller, you can also do that. Now when it comes to devices, that's a great range of things, but also as well those input methods that it supports. There wasn't really any input lag whenever we were using things. So recently we've been using a Razer Kishi to see if it improves cloud gaming. And yes, it improves Stadia a little bit, but the problem is there wasn't really anything to improve on. So we always tend to use a Bluetooth controller hooked up to the iPhone or the iPad and just kind of go from there. And with things like xCloud, it just absolutely decimates the cloud gaming experience. It's not a good experience unless you're using a physically plugged in controller like the Razer Kishi. But with Google Stadia and Nvidia GeForce Now, to its credit, you don't really have that much input lag. So that's absolutely one thing to credit Stadia with here. They have pretty much nailed it when it comes to devices that they now support and also devices that you can use as an input method. Some other things to really enjoy about Google Stadia is the pretty much instantaneous load times. So there's not really any long waiting times to get into your games. You load up the service, hit play, and then within about 10 to 20 seconds, your game is pretty much loaded and ready to go. So if you're looking for a day one release, and there are some of them on the service, despite what some news outlets say, you have to get it and play it pretty much as soon as that game launches. There's no need to download any large files. Depending on your internet connection and all of that, you literally hit play and you'll pretty much be ready to go. So that is a big win. But again, that's more of a win across all cloud gaming services, but it's one to note here when we're talking about Google Stadia and the reasons why you might want to use this cloud gaming service. Moving across on to the sort of middle of the road sort of things that you might want to consider. And the first one is game pricing. Now when we did our first impressions video, we talked about the fact that the game prices are astronomically high. And to be fair, we still stand by that. When a game comes out on day one, the prices tend to be really high. And I get that's set by the publishers, not necessarily Google Stadia, but they are really high. However, that's from a PC gaming experience, and obviously we've been spoiled by the likes of Steam and the Steam sales. And one thing that we absolutely do need to speak about when we talk about Stadia pricing is the fact there are a lot of sales, and these things seem to come around all the time. So we talk about Steam spoiling us with Steam sales. Stadia kind of do the same, and there tend to be some really big discounts. So if there is a game you want to play on the Stadia platform, it's definitely worthwhile just hanging fire and waiting for it to go into a sale, because the vast majority that are on the platform that we've seen have definitely gone into a sale over the past 3 to 4 months. And there's some pretty big savings to be had as well. So although that big main ticket price that they put up there is really astronomically high, the vast majority of the time you can get the games for a lot cheaper. So if you're patient, you will get those games at a discount. And moving across onto some of the needs improvement section, shall we say, and that is the games library. Now there are plenty of games there for the vast majority of people to be able to play. And if you're using the Pro subscription, then you'll get a lot of games included with that as well, which is a big win for the service. Google are doing a lot in the background to attract more developers to bring their games across onto the service. They're making better revenue splits. They've made it easier to port their games across. However, right now, the game platform is pretty lacking when it comes to game titles. Now, like I said, there's a lot to play and there's a lot to experience and really enjoy. However, if Google really want to nail this, they do need to expand that library to be able to attract some, I guess, more of those hardcore gamers that are used to picking up their console and having access or being able to purchase a large variety of games. Now, a lot of people out there will probably sit and go, well, it doesn't need Apex Legends or Call of Duty or Battlefield and all of that. However, we would say that it probably does. Even if that online multiplayer competitive shooter kind of suffers a little bit from using cloud services, it definitely makes sense to give people the option. Because right now, if somebody is making a buying decision, a lot of the time they're thinking of those big name titles that they want to be able to play, and that's why they'd lean towards something like a console or a PC instead. So it's definitely something that we hope to see improve in the future. As of today, despite a relatively decent library, it feels more like a Ubisoft streaming service than anything else. Ubisoft absolutely support Google Stadia, and it seems to be whenever they announce a game, it's a case of, oh, by the way, it's coming out on Stadia day one. You can even subscribe to Ubisoft Plus and not pay Google Stadia anything and stream all of the games from that service across onto Stadia. It's pretty wild when it comes to Ubisoft support, so at least that's one developer that are absolutely all over it. And fingers crossed others will start to follow suit. With the new revenue split and the new ease of porting across games, it seems kind of like a no-brainer, and hopefully that will start to happen in the future. However, as of right now, if you are looking to jump into this service, it's definitely worthwhile just have a look through the store first and just see if the games that you want to be able to play are supported on it, because it could be a deal breaker for you. So that's pretty much it when it comes to our thoughts on Google Stadia, and we would absolutely say it is well and truly worthwhile using. At the end of the day, there is a free trial available, so you can subscribe to Google Stadia Pro, try it out for a month, and see whether or not it ticks any of those boxes for you. When it comes to cloud gaming, it's one of those things that's really subjective, and it depends so much on your hardware and your streaming setup and everything else. There's so many factors that go into it, like your location and how far away you are from service, your hardware and your router, and all of that good stuff that can potentially make or break a cloud gaming service. So being able to try it out makes a lot of sense. That way as well you get an idea of what sort of games are available in the library, how it works with the devices and hardware that you want to be able to play with, and just experience it for yourself, because it is one of those things, kind of seeing is believing when it comes to cloud gaming, and sometimes it works fantastically well, sometimes for some people it just doesn't work particularly well, or sometimes another service will be the better one for you to go for. For us, Google Stadia has a lot of life in it, and despite all the naysayers saying that it's going to get killed off and it's going to die, personally we've definitely come around to the thinking that that's not going to be the case. There is a hell of a lot of work that Google still need to put into this, so over recent months we've seen it come across to Android TV and supported across more devices. We've seen them take steps to get more games onto the library as well, which is a massive step. But what they need to do next is start winning over those gamers. So those people at the moment who can't buy the new GPU, or they can't buy the new Xbox or the new PlayStation, they're the ones that they need to be targeting. But to do that, they need to do some marketing. Completely understand why they didn't do it up until now, because if they did, they'd have been crucified, because Ultimate Gamers would have looked and gone, I can't even play this on my TV without buying some old outdated hardware. Why in the hell would I bother? But they're at a stage now where it is easy to pick up and play on pretty much any device. So Google, start making that push. I know it's a chicken and the egg sort of situation about you need games on there to attract gamers, and you need gamers on there to attract developers to put games on it, and it just gets a bit tricky. But at the end of the day, they've taken care of one, or at least started to. Now they need to start getting those games across onto the platform so it becomes a more viable solution and something that people look at and go, actually, Stadia, it works, fantastic, gonna give it a go. So that's just our thoughts on it. We're not going to delve too much into the nitty-gritty about the streaming quality and all of that, because we've got other videos on that, so go back and watch those and see what you think of it. And like we said, it's absolutely, for us at least, the best cloud gaming platform out there when it comes to the streaming quality. Maybe not necessarily the library, and up to you whether or not that subscription service is worth it for you, or the free tier is worth it for you compared to the other solutions out there. But for us, that streaming quality is by far the best one. And to be honest, we really like the fact that you can buy games and just stream them across without having to pay a monthly subscription. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. Are you a Google Stadia user, or do you use another cloud gaming service? What are your thoughts on it if you are using it, and what do you like about other services if you use that instead? What would it take to bring you across to Google Stadia? We'd be interested in hearing that as well, because obviously there is still work for Google to do to make this a really viable and popular platform. In the meantime, we hope you've enjoyed that video, and if you have, bash that like button, because it helps Google to tell people that this is content worthwhile watching. And if you're into this sort of thing, hit the subscribe button and come along for some more awesome content in the future. In the meantime, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye!